In the endless expanse of space, where civilizations rise and fall like distant stars, there exists a truth that echoes through every corner of the galaxy. Mothers will cross any distance, face any danger, and defy any odds to save their children. What happens when that mother is a massive alien predator? Her pups are dying from an unknown plague, and the only hope lies with the species the entire galaxy fears most. What happens when desperation meets the one trait that makes humans truly terrifying to the cosmos? Their absolute refusal to let innocence suffer. This is the story of how a single act of maternal love changed the course of galactic history, and why the universe learned that human compassion can be more dangerous than human warfare. Dr. Sarah Chun had always believed that space was supposed to be quiet. The vacuum of the cosmos should have been peaceful, serene even. But as she stood in the observation deck of Research Station Kepler 442, watching the massive alien creature approach their small outpost, peace was the last thing on her mind. The creature was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Standing nearly 4 meters tall on powerful hind legs, it moved with the fluid grace of a natural predator. Its body was covered in thick, silver-blue fur that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly quality. Most striking were its eyes, large, intelligent orbs that held an unmistakable desperation that transcended species barriers. Dr. Chun, it's not responding to any of our communication attempts, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. His voice carried the edge of someone trying very hard not to panic. The universal translators are picking up vocalizations, but they're unlike anything in our databases. Sarah pressed her palm against the reinforced transparent steel window, her breath fogging the surface. The creature had stopped approximately 50 meters from the station's main docking bay. In its massive arms, it cradled what appeared to be 3 smaller versions of itself. Even from this distance, Sarah could see that something was terribly wrong with the smaller beings. They hung limp and motionless in their mother's protective embrace. "Ma'am, should I initiate defensive protocols?" asked Security Chief Morrison, his hand hovering over the weapons console. "We have no idea if this thing is hostile." Sarah shook her head without taking her eyes off the scene below. "Look at her, Morrison. Really look. Does that look like an attack posture to you?" The creature had lowered itself onto what appeared to be a natural kneeling position, placing the smaller beings gently on the station's landing platform. Her massive head was bowed, and her body language spoke of exhaustion and defeat that needed no translation. "She's asking for help," Sarah whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "She's brought her children here because she thinks we can help them." "Help them?" Torres turned from his station, confusion clear on his face. "Doctor, we're a human research outpost. We study planetary atmospheres and gravitational anomalies. We're not a medical facility, and we certainly don't know anything about alien physiology." Sarah was already moving toward the door. "Give me a portable life support unit and every medical scanner we have. And patch me through to Earth Command Priority 1 channel." "Where are you going?" Morrison called after her. "To do what any decent being would do," Sarah replied, not slowing her pace. "I'm going to help a mother save her children." The airlock seemed to take forever to cycle through its safety protocols. With each passing second, Sarah could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Through the small porthole, she could see the alien mother had moved closer to the station's entrance. Her massive form was hunched over the 3 small bodies, and Sarah could hear something that made her heart clench, a low, keening sound that was unmistakably the sound of grief. When the airlock finally opened, Sarah stepped onto the platform with her hands raised, showing she carried no weapons. The portable scanners hung from straps across her body, and the life support unit hummed quietly at her hip. The alien's head snapped up at the sound of the opening door, and for a moment, Sarah found herself staring into eyes that held an intelligence that was both alien and achingly familiar. The creature's vocalizations changed, becoming more urgent, more pleading. She gestured toward the 3 small forms with movements that were surprisingly gentle for such a massive being. As Sarah approached, She could see the severity of the situation. The young creatures were barely breathing. Their fur had lost its natural shimmer, and their small bodies seemed to be struggling against some invisible force. "It's okay," Sarah said softly, knowing the words meant nothing to the creature, but hoping her tone would convey her intentions. "I'm here to help." She activated her scanners and began running preliminary readings on the closest of the small beings. The readings that came back were unlike anything in human medical databases, but the underlying patterns were troubling. Cellular breakdown, systemic failure, and energy depletion on a massive scale. Whatever was affecting these creatures was killing them slowly and efficiently. The alien mother watched Sarah's every movement with intense focus. When Sarah reached out to touch one of the young creatures, the mother tensed but didn't interfere. The trust implicit in that moment wasn't lost on Sarah. This being had traveled who knows how far, carrying her dying children, to bring them to creatures she had never encountered before, based solely on the hope that they might help. "Torres, are you getting these readings?" Sarah spoke into her comm unit while continuing her scans. "Yes, ma'am, but I have to tell you, they don't make much sense. The energy signatures are unlike anything we've encountered. It's almost like their entire biological system is shutting down from some kind of energy drain." Sarah nodded, her mind racing through possibilities. "What about the environmental readings? Anything unusual about the space around them?" "Actually, yes. There's some kind of low-level radiation signature. It's not harmful to us, but it might be affecting their species differently. The wavelength is—" "Wait a minute." Torres's voice became excited. "Doctor, I think I know what this is. Remember the reports from the Kepler 438 system about the energy cascade that wiped out the plant life? This radiation signature matches those readings exactly." The pieces began falling into place in Sarah's mind. They're refugees. Something happened to their home system, and this radiation is slowly killing them. She looked up at the alien mother, whose gaze had never left her. "But why bring them to us? How did she even know we existed?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Park, the station's xenobiologist, appeared at the airlock entrance with several other crew members. "Dr. Chun, you need to see this. We've been monitoring galactic communications while you were out there. We're picking up distress signals from dozens of systems. This radiation cascade, it's spreading." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Spreading how far?" "Based on the signal patterns, it's moving toward the inner galaxy. At current speed, it will reach Earth's sector within 6 months." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. This wasn't just about helping one alien family. This was potentially about the survival of all life in this part of the galaxy. And somehow, this desperate mother had identified humans as potentially having the knowledge or resources to help. "The radiation signature is artificial," Park continued, his voice grim. "This isn't a natural phenomenon. Someone or something created this cascade, and it's designed to target organic life while leaving technology untouched. It's the perfect weapon for clearing out inhabited systems." Sarah looked down at the 3 small beings, then up at their mother, seeing the situation with new clarity. This wasn't just a medical emergency. It was first contact with a species fleeing genocide, and they had come to humans because someone or something in the galaxy had identified humanity as potentially capable of stopping what was essentially a wave of extinction. "Torres, give me that priority channel to Earth Command. Tell them we have a code black situation, potential extinction level threat." Sarah knelt beside the youngest of the alien pups, watching its labored breathing. "And tell them that the key to stopping it might lie in saving these 3 lives." The alien mother seemed to sense the change in the human's urgency. Her vocalizations became more complex, and she gestured not just toward her children, but toward the stars beyond. Sarah didn't need a translator to understand. She was trying to communicate that this was bigger than just her family. As Sarah began setting up more sophisticated life support systems around the 3 young beings, her mind was already working on the larger puzzle. If this radiation was artificial, there was a chance it could be stopped. But first, they needed to understand exactly how it worked and the only living test subject were dying in front of them. Morrison, I need you to prepare the medical bay for 3 critical patients with completely unknown physiology, Sarah commanded. Park, start analyzing every bit of data we can gather from these readings. And Torres, once you get through to Earth Command, start broadcasting on all known galactic frequencies. If this mother found us, there might be others out there who need to know that someone is working on a solution. The alien mother seemed to understand that things were happening around her children. She stood slowly, her massive form blocking out the station's lights. And for a moment, Sarah wondered if they had misinterpreted her intentions. But instead of aggression, the creature did something that transcended every language barrier in existence. She placed one massive hand over her heart, then gestured towards Sarah and her team. "She's thanking us," whispered Dr. Park. "She's thanking us for trying." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. 3 alien lives hung in the balance, possibly the survival of multiple species, including humanity, and they had just committed to a course of action based on nothing more than a mother's desperate love for her children and the human inability to turn away from suffering. As the team worked to carefully transport the 3 young beings into the station's medical bay, Sarah caught sight of something that made her heart skip. The alien mother was looking toward the stars, and, following her gaze, Sarah could see faint points of light that seemed to be moving. Ships, more refugees fleeing the cascade, and they were all heading in the same direction. They were all coming toward human space, drawn by whatever signal or knowledge had brought the first desperate mother to their small research station. Sarah realized that what they did in the next few hours wouldn't just determine the fate of 3 alien children. It would determine whether humanity would be remembered as the species that stood against extinction or the one that was consumed by it. The quiet of space had been shattered forever. The universe had just asked humanity to prove whether their greatest strength really was their compassion, or if that was just another myth that would die with the rest of organic life in the galaxy. As Sarah watched the alien mother settle into a protective crouch near the medical bay's entrance, she made a silent promise. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, they would find a way to save not just these 3 lives, but all the lives that would follow. Because if there was one thing that humans excelled at, it was refusing to accept the impossible when innocent lives hung in the balance. The real challenge was just beginning. 48 hours later, Research Station Kepler 442 had transformed from a quiet scientific outpost into the most important location in the galaxy. The medical bay buzzed with activity as Dr. Sarah Chun worked alongside a team of specialists who had arrived via emergency transport from Earth. The 3 alien pups, whom the team had begun calling the Cubs, lay in specially modified life support chambers that hummed with the constant effort of keeping them alive. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's foremost expert in xenobiology, leaned over one of the scanners with a frown that had become permanent over the past day and a half. "Sarah, these readings are unprecedented. Their cellular structure is completely adapted to absorb and process a specific type of cosmic radiation, the same radiation that's now killing them." Sarah looked up from where she was adjusting the atmospheric mixture in the youngest cub's chamber. The alien mother, whom they had started calling Vera, after the Latin word for truth, had not left her post outside the medical bay. She had accepted food and water brought by the crew, but refused to move more than a few meters from where her children lay fighting for their lives. "You're saying they evolved to live off radiation?" Sarah asked, checking the latest blood chemistry readings that meant nothing to human medicine, but were starting to show patterns they could track. Not just live off it, they require it. It's like they're living solar panels, but tuned to a very specific wavelength. The problem is, this cascade isn't just radiation, it's corrupted radiation. It's like someone took their life force and turned it into poison. Dr. Park approached with a data pad, his face grim. "It gets worse. I've been analyzing the communication signals we've intercepted from the refugee ships. At least 3 more species are affected, and they're all showing similar symptoms. Whatever created this cascade knew exactly how to target organic life across multiple evolutionary paths. The implications were staggering. Sarah had dealt with challenging medical cases before, but never anything where the patient's basic biology depended on something that was actively killing them. It would be like trying to treat a human who is allergic to oxygen. How do you save something that requires the very thing that's destroying it? What about the source? Sarah asked. Any luck tracking where this cascade originated? That's where things get really interesting, Park replied, pulling up a galactic map on his display. The wavefront is too uniform to be natural. Someone deployed this from multiple points simultaneously across a sphere approximately 50 light-years in diameter. The coordination required would need technology beyond anything we've encountered. A soft chime from one of the medical sensors interrupted their discussion. The vital signs for the middle cub were dropping again, despite all their efforts to stabilize its condition. Sarah rushed to the chamber, adjusting settings that she was learning through desperate trial and error. Through the medical bay's observation window, she could see Vera's massive form shifting restlessly. The alien mother seemed to sense when one of her children was in distress, her head lifting and turning toward the medical bay with an accuracy that was both impressive and heartbreaking. "We need to try something different," Sarah said, her voice tight with frustration. "Everything we're doing is just slowing down the inevitable. We need to understand not just what's killing them, but what they need to live." Dr. Vasquez nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing. What if we try exposing one of them to pure, uncontaminated cosmic radiation? The kind their species would have evolved with. Is that safe?" Park asked. "We don't know what the interaction might be between the corrupted radiation already in their systems." Her vocalizations became urgent and complex, and she gestured toward her children with movements that seemed almost ritualistic. "She knows what we're about to do," Sarah realized. "She's trying to tell us something." Dr. Park activated the universal translator, hoping it had learned enough from the past 2 days to provide some insight. The device hummed for a moment, then produced a halting, mechanical translation. "Permission granted for healing ritual. Mother agrees to risk." The weight of that translation hit everyone in the room. Vera understood that they were about to attempt something dangerous, something that might hurt her children, and she was giving them permission to try. The trust implicit in that moment was staggering. "All right," Sarah said softly. "Let's save some lives." The first exposure was carefully controlled. Just a few seconds of clean radiation directed at the youngest cub. The results were immediate and dramatic. The cub's bio-readings stabilized, its breathing became stronger, and for the first time in days, it showed signs of consciousness. But then, the corrupted radiation in its system began reacting to the clean energy, creating a toxic cascade that sent its vital signs plummeting again. "It's like giving blood to someone who's been poisoned," Vasquez observed. "The good stuff helps, but it also spreads the poison faster." Sarah stared at the readings, her mind racing. What if we're approaching this backwards? What if instead of trying to add clean energy, we need to remove the corrupted energy first? How do you filter radiation from a living being? Park asked. "You don't filter it," Sarah said slowly, an idea forming. "You absorb it. You give it somewhere else to go." She turned to look at Vera through the observation window. What if their species isn't just adapted to live off radiation? What if they're adapted to share it? Maybe they can transfer energy between themselves. It was a wild theory, but it was based on something they could observe. Vera had been showing signs of the same radiation poisoning as her children, but at a much slower rate. What if she had been absorbing some of their contamination, trying to take their poison into herself to save them? "You're talking about using the mother as a living filter," Vasquez said, understanding immediately. "But the amount of corrupted radiation in those 3 cubs would kill her." "Not if we give her somewhere to put it," Sarah replied. "The station's radiation shielding, it's designed to absorb and neutralize cosmic radiation. What if we create a circuit? Mother absorbs the corruption from her children, then transfers it to our shielding systems?" It was insane. It was untested. It required them to essentially jury-rig a living being into their space station's defense systems. But as Sarah looked at the three cubs, each fighting a losing battle against the poison in their veins, she knew they were running out of options. The team worked frantically for the next 6 hours, modifying their radiation shielding to accept and process the specific wavelength of corrupted energy. They created a connection system that would allow Vera to interface with their technology, something that required unprecedented trust and cooperation between species that had never even met before this crisis. When they presented the plan to Vera, using every visual aid and gesture they could think of, her response was immediate and unambiguous. She placed herself in the center of the experimental setup and reached out toward her children with a determination that transcended species barriers. The moment of activation was terrifying and beautiful. Energy flowed from the cubs to their mother in patterns of light that were visible to the naked eye. Vera's massive form shuddered under the strain, but she held position as the corrupted radiation moved through her body and into the station's shielding systems. The shielding itself began to glow as it processed and neutralized energy that was fundamentally hostile to life. For 10 minutes that felt like hours, the process continued. Vera's vital signs fluctuated wildly as she served as a living conduit between her dying children and the human technology that was purifying their poison. The cubs' readings began to improve steadily as the corruption was drawn out of their systems. And then suddenly it was over. The energy flow stopped, the lights faded, and Vera collapsed to her knees beside her children's chambers. For a terrifying moment, Sarah thought they had lost all 4 of them. But then the youngest cub opened its eyes, really opened them with awareness and intelligence that had been absent for days. The other 2 followed within minutes, their small forms beginning to move with something approaching normal vigor. Vera lifted her head and saw her children moving, alert, alive. The sound she made was unlike any of her previous vocalizations. It was pure joy, pure relief, pure love given voice. She reached toward the chambers with trembling hands, and Sarah realized that this massive alien predator was crying. "They're stable," Dr. Vasquez reported, her voice thick with emotion. "All 3 cubs are stable, and the corrupted radiation levels are dropping toward normal background levels." But even as they celebrated this incredible success, Sarah's mind was already moving to the larger implications. "This proves the cascade can be reversed," she said. "We just need to scale it up." Dr. Park was already running calculations. If we can adapt this process to work with their technology and ours, we could create radiation processing stations. Set them up in the path of the cascade. Use the affected species as living filters to clean the contamination. It would require massive cooperation, Sarah continued the thought. Dozens of species working together, sharing technology, trusting each other with their lives. They all turned to look at Vera, who was now gently touching the transparent steel of her children's chambers, speaking to them in soft, musical tones that needed no translation. She had risked everything to save her children, and in doing so, had shown them how to save everyone else. "She already proved it's possible," Sarah said quietly. "The question is whether the rest of the galaxy is ready to follow her example." As if she could sense their discussion, Vera turned toward the human team. She stood slowly, her massive form still showing signs of strain from the energy transfer, and approached them. When she reached Sarah, she did something completely unexpected. She knelt down and gently touched Sarah's shoulder with one massive hand. The universal translator worked overtime, producing a translation that was clearer and more complex than any they had achieved before. Gratitude beyond words. Children live because of courage. We'll teach others. We'll share knowledge. Together we heal the stars. Sarah felt tears running down her cheeks as she looked up into those alien eyes that held such intelligence, such determination, such hope. "Yes," she said, knowing that Vera could see her agreement even if she couldn't understand the words. Together we heal the stars. Over the next few hours, as the cubs grew stronger and more active, Vera began to demonstrate something that would change the course of galactic history. She activated a communication device that had been hidden beneath her fur, technology that was clearly far more advanced than anything humans had developed. She began broadcasting to the refugee fleet still approaching their system, and to other groups scattered across the galaxy. The message was simple but profound. The humans had found a way to reverse the cascade, but it required cooperation between species. It required trust. It required beings who had never met before to risk their lives for each other. And incredibly, impossibly, the response was immediate and positive. Ship after ship began altering course to rendezvous with Research Station Kepler 442. Species that had been enemies began working together. Technology and knowledge began flowing freely between civilizations that had never shared so much as a greeting before. Sarah watched it all unfold from the observation deck, with Vera's 3 cubs now playing in a specially constructed environment that allowed them to safely absorb normal cosmic radiation. The sight of these alien children playing and learning filled her with a hope she hadn't realized she'd been missing. The universe was about to become a very different place, and it had all started with a desperate mother's love for her children and humanity's refusal to turn away from suffering. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time since the crisis started, Sarah believed they might actually succeed. After all, they had already proven that love could overcome even the greatest distances, and that cooperation could solve problems that seemed impossible. Now, they just had to do it on a galactic scale. 6 months later, Sarah Chin stood on the command deck of the newly christened vessel, Hope's Promise, watching the largest cooperative fleet in galactic history prepare for what might be the most all ships report ready, came the reply from Lieutenant Torres, who had become something of a translation specialist as the fleet grew. The Crystalline Collective has confirmed their energy matrices are stable. The Verdant ships report their biofilters are at optimal capacity, and Vera's pack has positioned themselves at the cascade's leading edge. Sarah nodded, trying to keep her expression calm despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The radiation cascade had continued its inexorable march toward the inner galaxy, consuming system after system. But their growing understanding of its nature had revealed something crucial. It was weakening as it spread, becoming more diffuse, but also more vulnerable to the process they had developed. Dr. Vasquez, final confirmation on the energy calculations? Sarah asked. Everything checks out. Elena replied from her station, surrounded by displays showing complex energy flow patterns. If our models are correct, we have enough processing capacity to neutralize the cascade completely. But it requires precise coordination between all 47 species. One ship out of position, one energy transfer mistimed, and the whole effort could collapse. And if it collapses, then the cascade will likely become self-reinforcing, Dr. Park answered grimly. It would accelerate beyond our ability to stop it. This is our one chance. Sarah turned to the communication station where a very special translator had been installed. Over the past months, Vera had worked tirelessly with human linguists and AI specialists to create a universal communication system that could handle real-time coordination between species that had never cooperated before. The result was something unprecedented, a true galactic language that could convey complex technical and emotional concepts across any species barrier. Vera, how are your cubs doing? Sarah asked, speaking into the translator. The response came back immediately in Vera's now familiar voice, rendered through the universal system, strong and eager to help their family of many species. They understand the importance of this moment. We all do. Over the months of preparation, something beautiful had happened. Vera's 3 cubs had become symbols of hope for the entire fleet. Beings from dozens of different worlds had taken turns caring for them, playing with them, teaching them about their various cultures. The cubs had learned to communicate with everyone, becoming living bridges between species that had previously been strangers. More importantly, they had learned to use their natural radiation processing abilities in ways their species had never imagined before. Working with human technology and guidance from other energy-manipulating species, the Cubs had become incredibly efficient at purifying corrupted radiation. They weren't just survivors of the cascade. They had become its antithesis. "All ships, this is command," Sarah announced to the entire fleet. "In 30 minutes, we're going to do something that every tactical manual says is impossible. We're going to trust 47 species we've never fought beside, using technologies we've never combined to save a galaxy we've only just learned we share. But we're not doing this as strangers. We're doing this as family." The response that came back through the communication network was extraordinary. 47 different species, each expressing agreement and determination in their own unique way, but all unified by a common purpose. The universal translator did its best to render the complexity of it all, but Sarah could feel the emotional resonance even through the mechanical interpretation. 10 minutes to Cascade Intercept, Dr. Park announced. "All ships beginning final approach." Sarah watched as the massive fleet began to move into position. The formation was complex beyond description. Ships arranged not just in three-dimensional space, but positioned according to their energy processing capabilities, their biological compatibilities, and the specific wavelengths their crews could handle. At the center of it all, Vera's ship took point position alongside Hope's Promise, ready to bear the brunt of the initial cascade impact. "Sarah," came Vera's voice through the translator, using her human name with a warmth that transcended species barriers. "Before we begin, I want you to know something. When I first brought my children to your station, I was hoping you might save 3 lives. I never imagined you would save everyone." "You saved everyone," Sarah replied. "You showed us how. You trusted us when we were strangers, and you taught us that love really can cross any distance." "Contact in 60 seconds, Dr. Vasquez announced. "I'm reading massive energy signatures directly ahead. The cascade front is larger than we anticipated, but still within our processing parameters." Sarah gripped the railing of the command deck as she watched space itself begin to change ahead of them. The radiation cascade was visible now, a wave of sickly, wrong-colored light that devoured everything in its path. But as she looked around at the fleet surrounding them, at beings who had traveled unimaginable distances to be here, who had risked everything based on trust and hope, she felt something she had never experienced before. She felt proud to be part of something larger than herself. Not just human, not just one species among many, but part of the galactic community that had chosen cooperation over fear, love over hatred, hope over despair. "Contact now," came the announcement. The cascade hit the fleet like a wave of poison, and immediately every ship began to glow with the efforts of their crews. The energy processing systems came online in a symphony of cooperation that would have been impossible to imagine 6 months earlier. Ship after ship began absorbing the corrupted radiation, their crews serving as living filters to purify the galaxy's blood. But the scale was enormous. Even with all their preparation, the amount of corrupted energy was staggering. Sarah watched the readouts climb toward dangerous levels, saw crew after crew pushing themselves beyond safe limits to handle the energy flow. Processing efficiency down to 60%, Dr. Vasquez reported, strain evident in her voice. Some species are reaching their limits. That's when Vera's Cubs did something that no one had anticipated. They left their protective chambers and moved to the ship's energy transfer station. Through the communication network, their young voices could be heard speaking in the galactic language they had learned from dozens of species. "We help now," came their collective message. "We take the poison from our family." "Absolutely not," Sarah said immediately. "You're children. We're not putting children at risk." "We are not human children," came the response, and Sarah could hear wisdom beyond their years in their translated voices. "We are children of the galaxy now. This is our galaxy to save too." Before anyone could stop them, The three cubs linked themselves into the energy processing network. Their natural abilities, enhanced by months of training and human technology, created a processing efficiency that exceeded anything they had calculated. The corrupted radiation flowed through them like water through a filter, emerging as clean, life-giving energy that began to revitalize the space around them. But more than that, their participation seemed to inspire every other being in the fleet. Processing rates jumped as crews saw these young aliens risking themselves for a galaxy they had never known without the cascade. Species after species began pushing beyond their supposed limits, finding reserves of strength they hadn't known they possessed. 90% processing efficiency, Vasquez reported in amazement. 95%. Sarah, I think we're actually going to do this. The battle against the cascade continued for 18 hours. 18 hours of unprecedented cooperation, of beings risking their lives for strangers, of love proving stronger than destruction. When it was finally over, when the last corrupted energy had been processed and purified, the silence that fell over the fleet was profound. Then, slowly, reports began coming in from across the galaxy. Systems that had been dead for months were showing signs of life again. The cascade hadn't just been stopped, it had been reversed. Clean energy was flowing back along the same paths the corruption had taken, revitalizing everything it touched. "We did it," Dr. Park whispered, staring at readings that showed healthy energy signatures across dozens of star systems. "We actually did it." But Sarah was looking at something else entirely. Through the observation windows of Hope's Promise, she could see Vera's ship. The alien mother was standing at her own observation deck with her three cubs, and they were looking back at the human ship. Even across the void of space, Sarah could see that Vera was smiling, the universal expression of joy that needed no translation. "Fleet-wide communication coming in," Torres announced. It's from Earth Command." The message that came through was brief, but carried the weight of history. "To the Hope's Promise fleet and all allied species, your actions have been observed throughout the galaxy. The cascade has been completely neutralized, and preliminary reports indicate full ecosystem recovery in affected systems. More importantly, you have proven that cooperation and compassion can overcome any threat. Welcome to the Galactic Alliance. We have much work to do together." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she looked around at the fleet of beings who had started as strangers and had become family. The galaxy was about to become a very different place. Trade routes would open between species that had never contacted each other. Scientific knowledge would flow freely across dozens of civilizations. Cultural exchange would enrich every world. But more than that, they had proven something that would echo through galactic history. They had proven that love really could cross any distance, that trust could overcome any fear, and that cooperation could solve problems that seemed impossible. "Vera," Sarah spoke into the communication system one more time. "Thank you. Thank you for trusting us with your children, for teaching us how to save everyone, for showing us what it means to be family." The response came back in the warm, musical tones that Sarah had learned to love. "Thank you for proving that humans are exactly what the galaxy needed. Thank you for showing us that there are beings in the universe who will risk everything for strangers. Thank you for saving not just our children, but everyone's children." As the fleet began its journey back to their various home systems, but now as members of a true galactic community, Sarah found herself thinking about how this had all started. A desperate mother bringing her dying children to strangers, hoping for help she had no reason to expect. That single act of trust had changed the course of galactic history. 6 months later, Sarah would receive a message that would make her smile for days. Vera's cubs had started a school on their homeworld, teaching young aliens from dozens of species how to use their natural abilities to help others. They called it the Hope School, and their first lesson was always the same. Family isn't defined by species, it's defined by who you choose to save. The galaxy had learned that humans could be trusted with its children, and Humans had learned that they had children throughout the stars. It was the beginning of something beautiful, something unprecedented, something that started with a mother's love and ended with a family that spanned the cosmos. And somewhere in the depths of space, the echo of that first desperate mother's journey continued to inspire beings across dozens of worlds to choose trust over fear, cooperation over conflict, and love over everything else. Because sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. One being willing to risk everything for the ones they love, and others willing to help them succeed. The universe had become a much brighter place, one family at a time.